You may be asking yourself, monkeys on typewriters for 1,000 years? Animals becoming more sentient than human beings? Why is Daniel's mother, after such a long time, still so attractive? Two brain cells fighting over control of one man's idiotic mind, finally getting together to make a video. Where's my Raid Shadow Legends sponsor? Will human beings ever be able to top the masterpiece that was the B movie? How long can I procrastinate for until it becomes a problem? And most importantly, is this the worst green screening you've ever seen in your life? Well, the answers to that should be fairly obvious. Yes. But good morning, degenerates. As you can see, I'm coming to you right here from my cave, where I've been hiding and crying, because Papa Amazon still won't give me a key, because I'm not an American. But you know what? This isn't about my problems. This is about news, about a game that's going to be amazing. Or at least a game I think is going to be amazing. Please God, don't fuck this up and ruin all MMOs forever, please. WoW cannot be king forever.
At long last. No king rules forever, my son.
It's about time we did another deep dive. Oh, this one was the 14th of May. I'm really far behind on this one. So today I'm going to be doing a deep dive on something that I'm a little bit behind schedule on. It's not too bad. You know what? We've still got a long way to go. I need to stretch this out until we get there. And, you know, these videos are not for everyone. And you know what? You might have something better to do and want to put this on in the background while you learn about this with me, straight from Papa Amazon's mouth. So today we're going to be taking a long drawn out look at the arenas of the Ancient Guardians. I'm going to be giving you some of my thoughts, my opinions on it, and we're going to be reading through it together. Wait. You can read, right? But anyway, let's get right into this. Let's not waste too much of your time. It's not like I really have to keep to the whole 10-minute thing. I'm not earning money off of YouTube. Imagine being dumb enough to think you can earn a full-time living off of YouTube. So, on your adventures and trials in Eternum, you'll stumble upon mysterious and time-worn structures. Clearly constructs of the ancients, the true purpose of these arenas has been lost to time. Through unknown magic and ritual, the ancients were able to bend the laws of Eternum to bind some of its most powerful denizens within these structures. Ooh, so that's a nice little play into the lore. We don't know what these structures were, we don't know what they did. This is kind of like a historical dig site. We kind of sit there wondering what the hell happened here, not knowing and only being able to speculate. That's a good addition to the story, that's a good add-in without breaking any of the lore just because we want an arena to go beat something up in. And on top of that, with the little bit of a release of the trailer that we saw of people beating up this thing in the arena, I have to say it looks very gorgeous for so much violence. Even the daunting challenge of finding the proper key to access these arenas pales when compared to the martial trials that await any group of adventurers who dare enter. So this is actually a really fun thing to dig into here. This is kind of like a mini dungeon, a little sectioned off arena where you and a team go in and get your asses kicked or kick some ass, while you go wrecking a tree person and making some certain people very upset with you.
How dare you!
Now the fun part about this is, this proves to me that Amazon is capable of doing larger dungeons if they really wanted to add it into the game. That at some point we could get sectioned off PvP areas that add on to what's ever in the game. And I think from my last video I need to make this very, very clear. The way I describe open world PvP should probably be corrected to be full open world PvP. Let's just make sure that's clear before things happen in the comments. I also have to say I'm kind of a glutton for PvP in this game. From all the aspects of it I've seen, from all the aspects I've heard about it, it is a really, really, really solid PvP system. That's why I want so much of it. That's why I want more. I want as much as possible. I'm a greedy bastard and I will take every piece of PvP that this game gives me. And I sure as hell hope it gives me a lot. Then below this we've got an image of a tree person here, chilling and staring at us, questioning why we're gonna turn him into firewood and why we should let him. Nothing too specific to note about this image. The only thing I can think to say is that if you notice here, there's a blue glow that surrounds the Spriggan. that you have to fight. Now, if the ancients captured him and manipulated him, is this a different form of the Azoth in the game? Because most of the corruption is red, not blue, but this guy specifically is glowing blue. The other thought in my mind is that maybe this blue glow is just more specifically related to the Angry Earth faction that's sitting in the game already, and that everything with that bluish glow we can kind of assume is either gonna be the ancients or it might be a part of the Angry Earth. But moving on before I rant for another 30 minutes and have to cut it out of the video, once inside the arena you'll encounter one of the most powerful creatures on Eternum, the Spriggan. Born of the land, it is a primal extension of the power of Azoth. So there we go, it has something to do with Azoth. We know already that the Angry Earth faction has a lot to do with this Azoth element. It might just be that that blue glow there is just another form of Azoth that we're yet to encounter, and it turns out the first one we encounter is purely the red form that does a lot of corrupting of beings and turning them into zombies with a bit of a brain. Don't be fooled into thinking its gnarled limbs are stiff or its movements limited. The champion of the Angry Earth is as swift as it is deadly. Overcoming this foe will reward you greatly, but it is no small task. Now, the one thing I can think that's interesting to note about this guy specifically is that Spriggans, if I'm not wrong, kind of come from Cornish mythology with a lot of fae and a lot of fairies that get added in there, which means that from what we've seen the Roman Empire show up. If we look at some of the images, we've seen a little bit of the Spanish conquistadors show up. We've also seen a Viking boat and what looks to be a Japanese sailboat in the background of this image right here. So when looking at New World, we might not just see cultures and civilizations and different building techniques all the way up to the 1700s, but we might end up seeing a bunch of different lore-related creatures, mythical creatures that have showed up throughout human history. In all of our stories and all of our books, they might all center around this island of Eternum. And I feel this kind of just adds to the lore of the game. This adds to the story. This gives us something coherent. It's not just the human beings showing up. It might be that the stories of this universe all emanate from this island. All the mystical and magical creatures have come in contact with this Azoth and have been changed in some shape or form. So the encounter. As you slay particular enemies in New World and dig through the loot they drop, you'll occasionally come across a Spriggan key. Along with the key comes specific coordinates on where you need to go to use it. Upon reaching your destination, you will find an ancient vine-encrusted pillar. From there you can turn your key and be teleported straight to the arena. Anyone grouped with you at that time will also be teleported if they are standing around the pillar. Okay, so this is our teleport into the dungeon. It's not like we run into a cave and we see a nice little spirally thing and we just book it in there, take the most valuable item and book it out of there like in some games. But this is kind of more like a mini dungeon. So the only thing I can think to really call this, it's like a single boss dungeon. It's like we go in as a group, we fight this giant monstrous creature, and then we leave. Now, one of the things that this suggests to me is that we could do these kinds of arenas, not against a monster, but against other players as well, within a smaller grouped PvP arena. And I think that might be what they're hinting at for the PvP players here, because if hell, you can do this with a singular big monster boss to kill for the PvE players, why couldn't you add in a second group for the PvP players, especially if you've already got high definition 50v50 PvP down already? So once inside the arena, your battle against the terrifying Spriggan will begin. You'll only have a set amount of time to best this enemy, so you'll need to make sure you go in prepared. It's always wise before teleporting into the arena that you repair your weapons and armor and craft plenty of anything you think you might need. The Spriggan won't go down easy. Now here's another little hint that we see looking at this paragraph. We now know that our weapons will wear down over time. We now know that everything is not a constant in this world, that we have to repair things, that the armor we craft might break and we might need to replace things. This means that there's consumables in the game, not just from the perspective of maybe potions and certain items we use, but our gear itself might break and be destroyed. This also tells us that these fights are not meant to be fair. that we should try and build up as much of an advantage as possible against whatever creature we're facing, that this is an all-out brawl for supremacy, and this thing is not going to make it easy on us, or at least I hope it would. Then just below that we've got this lovely little image of a marauder begging for his life just before he gets thwacked with the big tree of justice. He should have chosen to be Covenant.
No, stop!
Again, looking at the detailing of this, what I can kind of see from this image is that we've got a kind of circular arena to run around in. On top of that, the Spriggans seems to change shape. That branch in its hand is not there in the first image. That thing right there might be an ability, or it might be an attachment, or it might be a tree that the Spriggan picks up to beat the hell out of us. This is kind of confirmed when we take a look at the video that goes along with this, that shows the Spriggan dropping this big log that... Okay, don't take that out of context. But when we kill this Spriggan, he drops this gigantic branch that he was swinging around at us, which means it might not be there and it might not be attached to him the entire time. If you're skilled enough, and maybe even a bit lucky, and you do manage to take down the Spriggan, you'll be handsomely rewarded for your efforts. Success in an arena awards high quality equipment, but in rare cases they can also award legendary gear with powerful equipment traits. Some of the most powerful gear in the game comes from defeating these arenas. Right, so now we've got a reason for the PvE players to go into these arenas. We've got a reason to keep coming back to these arenas as well. It's not just a once-off thing. There's a chance you get a legendary item. There's a chance you get good gear. You might just end up with garbage, but it'll be good for someone else, which is also another reason that it's brilliant that you can go in here with an entire group, because you might not get something out of it, but someone you're playing with who's in your faction might get something that's a massive upgrade to them, and you know what that does? That bolsters your entire army. And hell, if you've helped them with this, maybe later they'll be helping you defend your settlement because they remember you being the guy who sat there in an arena, got nothing, and they got a brilliant item, and you ended up helping him get that. Hopefully. Don't go AFK. Please. So if time runs out, or everyone in your party has been stomped under the crushing power of the Spriggan, your experience in the arena will come to an end. All players will be unceremoniously teleported back to the ancient pillar where your encounter began. Want another go at besting the Spriggan? You'll need to track down another Spriggan key out in the wilds of Eternum. So this paragraph tells us kind of how this fight goes down. We can't just run in there, kite the thing around and waste our time. This is a time limited event. You can't get around this enemy by wasting a bunch of time and maybe tossing a rock at it every now and then and just staying out of range. You have to beat this thing down, you have to rush it down, but you have to try and not die as well. Now the mechanic that I'm interested in here specifically is the attaining of the Spriggan key. Does it drop from a particular enemy? Does it drop anywhere in the world and it's all down to luck? Do you have to track one down when you're fighting the Angry Earth faction, particularly because in the lore, maybe they're trying to free one of their brethren. Maybe it's stuck somewhere in an ancient temple. I'm wondering where the hell these keys are, where you find them, and how much of a random drop chance do you have to get these things, because these may be a massive commodity to trade if you can trade it between players as well, which again kind of plays into the gameplay where you might not want to go on a Spriggan run because, well, guess what, you've got all the gear you need from it, but someone else does, and now you've got a key that you can sell off to someone else for something you need instead. Okay, before we look at this Q&A, we've got a nice little image again of that filthy marauder hiding under that giant tree branch that's going to destroy him. We've got a really cranky looking Spriggan, and we've got a lot of glowy effects and very beautiful visuals. This is something I've kind of come to expect, and something I actually expect kind of take for granted at some point from Amazon games, because, well, all the visuals are just beautiful, and at some point I'm just going to get used to it being that way, and I'm probably going to play another game and I'm going to be really sad when it doesn't look like that. So thanks Amazon, you've ruined every other game. So Q&A with the team. We sat down with the art and design team, digging deeper into what it took to bring the Spriggan to life. Here's what they had to say. The Spriggan originated from English folklore. Ah, Cornish, you see, I was right. That was actually kind of just pure luck, Jesus. And has seen many iterations over time. What were some of the early concepts the team drew inspiration from? In the earliest concepts of the Spriggan, we designed it as an earth elemental, a spirit of earth, wood and stone, drawing on descriptions that show up in early folklore from multiple cultures. The creature initially had a tree stump as its core element, but it had a lot more rock armor and took on a tank posture. Over time, the creature grew into more of a boss, so it slowly evolved into a taller, more agile form that relied less on armor and brute strength, more on mobility, combat skill, and its supernatural powers. So this does tell us something about the thinking process behind designing this creature. They wanted this to be a big, chunky, meaty, beefy boss to fight, but I think at some point what they're not telling us is that they've seen that too many times. You've seen that in so many different games where it's just a big, chunky meat shield that you have to keep beating away at until hopefully you kill it. It seems they've kind of shifted their focus away from that, and they've wanted this to be a very dynamic fight, a very mobile fight, and a very difficult one, because it's not just down to this thing has a gigantic amount of health and very easy abilities to dodge, but it's down to how quickly can you get out the way? Can you predict its movements? Can you counter its movements? Do you know what's coming next? You might just fail a few times before you get used to the Spriggan. You might need to track down 3 or 4 keys before you're aware of what's going to happen to it. And I have to give them credit where credit's due. This sounds very Dark Souls-esque. This sounds like a multiplayer Dark Souls boss fight where you've got one big scary enemy that's got some really freaky moves that you might not know what's coming next, and you have to adapt as quickly as possible, and so does the rest of your team. What was the design philosophy when creating its combat style? When we were creating the Spriggan, we wanted to create this powerful being in which the root of their power stems from the earth. Of course, this power is also corrupted and very angry, so we wanted to create something that was large, frightening, and that conveyed an angry power in all of their attacks. Well, they succeeded there. We designed it to have a body of wood, earth, and stone that was created by an evil force of corrupted nature. After that, we put a lot of thought into how it can use this body, such as the growing roots and vines for attacks, along with the large club it uses for a slew of melee attacks. So that hints at the idea that we might not just be dealing with melee attacks. If it's using this large club that I was talking about earlier in this video, well then maybe it's got some ranged ones we need to deal with. Maybe, as we can see in this image down here, I believe that this fight is going to have a ton of dynamism in it, that there's going to be a lot of movement, there's going to be a lot of tactics that go into this, and you need to really think about what you're doing before things go wrong, or before you do something stupid that gives the Spriggan the advantage over you and your group. We also wanted it to be able to tap into nature's power to heal. And that is when we came up with the idea for it to have a shield of roots that it covers it so it can regen. All of these elements combined has created what we know as the Spriggan. So there we go, we've got a shield, we've got a defensive ability, we've got a thing that allows the Spriggan to heal its way back up. That's something we're going to want to stop, especially if we're fighting this thing on a timer. So on the animation side of the Spriggan, we wanted its personality to feel threatening, ferocious, and magical. This creature is born from the surroundings it lives in, and we wanted its attacks to suggest that. We really wanted to push an uncontrollable feeling to a lot of its combos, with wild swings and slams, giving the sense of rage and raw power to every attack. Based off of the design, the Spriggan needed to be swift on its feet, with the ability to quickly close down the player at any distance. No one can hide. So there we go, dealing with the ranged problem. We can't kite this thing because it's faster than us. We can't really get away from this thing unless we're distracting it. We have to remember that in this fight there are more of us than there are of this thing, and if it's swinging around wildly, if it's being vicious and aggressive, that means that its movements are probably going to be telegraphed, as it would be with any other game, and we will have time to react to that. And players who get greedy and try and take that extra hit, players who try and get that extra swing in or think that they're perfectly safe and don't have to react to mechanics, are going to be sorely disappointed. This does not seem like any kind of boss fight where you can not react to the mechanics of the fight. This is kind of good in a way. I hate to see those fights where you can just ignore all the most important mechanics and you can just swing at this boss and kill it instantly, and it doesn't matter what it's doing to you. Do you have any tips or tricks we should know before encountering this fearsome Spriggan? One of the biggest tips we can give would be to not go alone. Now that probably means you can go alone if you're cheeky or greedy enough and you know what you're doing. Having a well-rounded group is important for this encounter. Melee DPS is definitely needed, but also having at least one ranged and healer build is key. This has just told us something else specific that I haven't covered on my channel. There is healing in this game. There are healer builds. There are people who can specialize in keeping other people alive. Now I'm interested to see how healer builds play into solo play in PvE specifically, and I'm interested to see how healer builds are kind of balanced out in PvP, because they might end up being super overpowered because those guys can keep healing themselves up, or they might end up being super underpowered because they do 0 damage. I'm very interested to see how they solve the healer quandary and where they put healers in this game and to what degree they are useful. The Spriggan can break through most blocks pretty quickly, since their big attacks tend to deal out a large amount of stamina damage. So this tells us another important key about the combat. We don't just get our health damaged, we get our stamina damaged. I can't sit here and pretend that I didn't know about this before, but it seems stamina is a very important aspect of this fight, of any fight in New World, and that it's not just down to how much health you have. These kind of things I like to hear about because they add another layer onto the combat. It's not simple, it's not straightforward, and it's not going to be very basic hack and slash. This is a very complex mechanic system, and it's going to have a very high skill cap if it's anything like I imagine it would be. Staying mobile and using your dodges sparingly is very important for survival as well. Keeping an eye on the attack tells is extremely important, since it does like to deal with players that are both near and far within the blink of an eye. This right here is the Amazon game devs and the art department telling us that this thing telegraphs its attacks, that we will have time to respond to these attacks, and ignoring mechanics will be fatal to you and the group you have. You want to make sure that your weapons are tip-top and you have some potions at your side to help. And one final tip would be to look out for their healing shield. When the shield has been raised, they will begin to regenerate their health, so having all players attacking at this point is key. This will stop its regeneration and break it out of the shield early. Now, interestingly enough, what I'm wondering about this fight, and what they haven't told us, at least not yet maybe, is are there things like resistances? Are there things that this creature is weak to? If we imbue our weapons with fire, if we get someone who's really good at fire magic, will it be easier for them to deal with the Spriggan, but then conversely it might be more difficult for them to deal with another boss further down the line who's then immune to fire damage or just very resistant to it? I do wonder if that mechanic would be in the game. I do wonder if maybe putting that in would be overkill and make the fight too difficult, or whether that might just be a nice little addition that comes with later bosses in this game, and this is more of sending out a feeler and an experiment to see what the community does with it. And lastly, they've asked them, do you have a favorite move or animation? I would have to say my favorite set of moves are the vine arm attacks. The animation team put so much time into getting these to look great. We also worked with the tech art and VFX teams to get the vines built with special adjustable shaders to create the growing and retracting effect. Without a group effort, we would have never gotten the Spriggan to the exciting state that we see today. So here we've got a little bit of an expose of that vine arm move, of this thing branching out to beat your ass from a distance, just like your dad did when you knocked over that shelf, but it wasn't really your fault, you were just trying to get something that was on the top shelf. And there is so much to explore and discover in New World. Unique and diverse creatures, epic vistas, dense forests, and danger around every turn. Your time in Eternum will be filled with adventure from the start. Do you have the skill and guts to take down one of Eternum's mightiest angry earth warriors? So that's been a quick little deep dive into the arena of the Ancient Guardians, probably going to be called AOA at some later point in the game, and that gives us a little bit of a clue of what Amazon plans to do when it comes to the PvE of the game. Also, if you like this video, give it a like, subscribe if you want more content like this, and hopefully a lot more gameplay when I finally get into the New World beta. And if you didn't like it, well then, you know where that dislike button is. But that's it from me for now. I hope you enjoyed watching. I hope you have a great day. I hope everything goes your way. But it's time now for you and I to bugger off. I'm gonna go back into my cave and cry some more until I get a game key.